Imagine a man who defied all expectations, someone who was born into prejudice but became one of the greatest saints in history. Saint Martin Delaware Porres was not noble, he did not have wealth, and for many, he did not have a promising future. After all, in the 16th century, being the son of a former black slave and a Spanish nobleman meant facing closed doors on all sides. But instead of accepting an imposed destiny, he chose to write his own story, and he did it in the most extraordinary way possible, transforming pain into service, rejection into compassion, and humility into power. But wait, why have most people never heard of him? Why is a man who performed miracles, healed the sick, bilocated, and even defied gravity not as remembered as other saints? Maybe because his story is not comfortable. Martin proves that you don't need status to be great, that true greatness is born in those who serve, and that faith can move not only mountains, but harden hearts. He was ignored in life because of his origins, but today he is an eternal example of overcoming obstacles and loving others. And here's the detail that few people realize. His story is not just about the past. It has everything to do with you. Because at the end of the day, who has never felt diminished? Who has never had a dream discredited? Who has never been underestimated? Martinho's journey is a map for those who want to transform obstacles into purpose. And by learning about his trajectory, you can discover something powerful. Perhaps what limits you today is precisely what can take you further. From the beginning, Saint Martin Delaware Porres' life was marked by challenges that would shape his extraordinary character. The son of a former Panamanian slave and a Spanish nobleman, he was born in Lima in 1579, bearing the burden of racial discrimination from birth. His father, reluctant to accept a mixed-race son, registered him without a name, making him illegitimate in the eyes of society. This meant that he would grow up without privileges and would face closed doors simply because of the color of his skin. But you see, it is precisely in the greatest difficulties that some of humanity's greatest stories are written. Rejection did not define him. On the contrary, it strengthened his resilience. The world around him made a point of reminding him that he was different, that he did not belong. As was common at the time, mixed-race children had no right to inheritance or access to a decent education. Many in the same situation rebelled or succumbed to marginalization, but Martin chose another path. At a young age, he realized that he could find value not in the blood that ran through his veins, but in what he could offer the world. It is curious to note how society tends to judge by external factors, while the true giant of history were those who transcended appearances. If he had accepted the limited vision that was imposed on him, he would never have become who he became. Discrimination was with him, but Martinho did not allow it to define his steps. He understood something that few people realize. The greatest response to prejudice is not hatred, but overcoming it. While others complained about injustices, he prepared himself. And this lesson applies to any of us. It doesn't matter where you were born or what labels they try to stick on you. What really matters is what you decide to do with it. Martinho chose to act, and this decision would lead him on a surprising path. From an early age, Martinho demonstrated an unusual intelligence and dexterity. Without access to a privileged formal education, he developed his skills on his own, becoming an excellent barber, surgeon, and pharmacist. At a time when medicine was still in its infancy and treatments were rudimentary, Martinho was already applying knowledge that surprised even the most experienced. He not only mastered the techniques, but did something that few professionals did. He treated each person with respect, regardless of their social status. This in itself made him different. After all, how often do we see people who master a technique, but lack empathy? His vocation was not limited to technical talent. He saw the profession as a way to serve, not just to survive. While some barbers of the time limited themselves to cutting hair, he expanded his knowledge, performing minor surgical procedures and creating herbal medicines. Imagine a young man without privileges, acquiring knowledge on his own and applying to help those most in need. This leads us to a powerful reflection. How much of our potential do we waste by not exploring our abilities? How many times do we limit ourselves to what is conventionally taught, without seeking to learn more? In addition to his talent for medicine, Martinho had a gift that could not be learned from books: the sensitivity to perceive the pain of others. He did not see patients simply as patients, but as people who needed care and support. And here is an unquestionable truth. Technical knowledge without humanity does not transform lives. Martinho understood that a touch, the right word, and even a simple look could have as great an impact as medicine. His journey was just beginning, and his desire to serve would soon lead him on an even greater path. Martin's desire to pursue religious life was not an impulsive decision, but a decision shaped by years of observation and unwavering faith. He saw the Dominicans not simply as religious people, but as active agents of social change. However, reality was not kind to him. Because he was of mixed race, he was not allowed to join as a full brother. The only option available to him was a position of donato, a lower rank within the order's hierarchy. In other words, he would be a servant tasked with the most menial tasks. Many would have given up when faced with this barrier, but Martin saw beyond the label. He knew that true value lay not in the title he carried, but in the impact he could make. With humility and determination, Martin embraced every task he was given. He cleaned the convent, ran the kitchen, and did manual labor without ever complaining. But rather than becoming just another servant, he used this space to expand his mission. As he swept the floor, he paid attention to the suffering of those in need. As he prepared food, he reflected on how he could help even more. And while he was treated as inferior by some, he grew spiritually stronger. The world may try to limit someone through labels, but the greatness of a purpose is not measured by the position, but by the impact it generates. Over time, his dedication caught the attention of his superiors. It was impossible to ignore someone who worked without expecting recognition, but whose action spoke louder than any title. His spirit of service, combined with unwavering faith, became a living testimony to the true essence of Christianity. Without realizing it, Martin was already transforming the view of many within the convent itself. And it was precisely this unwavering commitment to charity that would pave the way for something even more extraordinary: the miracles he would begin to perform. It wasn't long before Martin became known for something that went beyond his humility and service. Reports began to emerge that he had supernatural gifts. Some people swore they had seen him in two places at the same time, a phenomenon known as bilocation. While he was helping the sick in the convent, he was also seen comforting a dying man in another part of the city. To skeptics, this seemed impossible. But to those who knew him closely, nothing seemed out of the ordinary for a man whose faith transcended the barriers of the natural. After all, how many times has human logic been unable to explain what the heart already knew to be real? In addition to bilocation, another gift attracted attention: healing. Martin did not have the resources of a doctor, but his presence alone was enough to help the sick recover from serious illnesses. There are reports of people on the verge of death who, when touched by him, regained their strength as if they had never been sick. His faith was so intense that it seemed to channel something divine, an invisible force that restored both body and soul. And this didn't just happen among humans. He also healed animals, treating them with the same love and dedication he had for people. One of the most striking episodes was when a bricklayer fell from the scaffolding and, at the moment of the fall, stopped suspended in the air. Witnesses were paralyzed by the scene. Martin simply raised his hand, and the man was gently placed on the ground, unharmed. This type of event was not common, even among the saints. But if there is one thing that history proves, it is that the impossible becomes reality when someone lives their mission to the fullest. And the more miracles happened, the more people realized that Martin was not just a dedicated servant, but a true channel of blessings. And the most impressive thing was that for him, all these gifts had only one purpose: to serve. And service for Martin meant much more than helping humans. His love went beyond species and barriers. For Martin, helping was not a choice, it was a calling. He not only fed the poor, but made a point of treating them as brothers and sisters, with the same dignity he would have before a king. It didn't matter if someone was rich or poor, sick or healthy, everyone was worthy of his care. If someone came to the convent hungry, he didn't hesitate to share what he had, even if it meant giving up his own food. And when there were no resources, his faith solved the problem. It is said that on a day of scarcity, he filled a small basket with bread, and as he distributed it, the quantity seemed inexhaustible. What was little multiplied in his hands. His love for others was not limited to humans. Martin saw value in all forms of life, including animals. One of his most curious habits was to feed rats, dogs, and cats with the same patience he had with people. While many saw them as pests, he treated them as creatures equally worthy of divine care. One day, when he noticed that rats were being hunted in the convent, he gathered them together and, in an almost paternal tone, asked them not to invade the pantry. To the friar's surprise, the rodents obeyed and never caused any problems again. For Martin, every living being deserved love and respect, regardless of its appearance or usefulness to humans. His commitment to charity went beyond specific actions. It was a way of life. He did not wait for help to reach those in need. He sought it out. He went out into the streets, visited the sick, and consoled the desperate. His presence was a mixture of consolation and hope. For many, Martin was not just a charitable man. He was the answer to silent prayers. But his journey within the convent was not only full of glory. He faced challenges that tested his faith and humility. Even within the convent, where he should have found shelter, Martin faced challenges. Many saw him as nothing more than a servant, a man destined to clean and cook, with no right to great spiritual ambitions. But he never allowed discrimination to define his worth. He continued to serve with humility, without ever complaining. And, ironically, it was this same humility that earned him the admiration of even the most skeptical. Over time, even the superiors who looked down on him began to recognize that they were dealing with someone much more than a simple donato. He did not need to demand respect. His life spoke for him. Martin left this world in 1639, but his impact has not faded. His tomb became a place of pilgrimage, and reports of graces obtained through his intercession multiplied. But it was only centuries later, in 1962, that the Church officially recognized him as a saint, becoming the first black man canonized in the Americas. For many, he became a powerful symbol, living proof that holiness does not choose color, origin, or social status. His story inspires those who, to this day, face barriers imposed by prejudice and life's difficulties. And the most impressive thing? His legacy lives on. His example of humility and service went beyond the borders of Peru and echoes to this day. In a world where so many seek recognition, Martin teaches us that true impact lies not in visible greatness, but in the ability to transform lives around us. After all, how many opportunities to help others do we waste in our daily lives? How many times do we ignore someone who needs us? Martin's story invites us to reflect and act. After learning about the story of St. Martin Delaware Porres, an inevitable question remains. What have you done with the difficulties you face? Martin could have given in to prejudice, to the fate that they tried to impose on him. But he chose to act. He didn't wait to be recognized to start transforming lives, and that's exactly what made him unforgettable. So, what's stopping you from taking the next step? Fear of failure? The opinion of others? Or maybe the belief that you don't have enough to start? The truth is that there will always be obstacles. But the difference between those who make history and those who become mere spectators of life lies in the decision to act. If Martin had waited for ideal conditions, he might never have performed miracles. And if today you're waiting for the right moment, here's the secret. It will never come. The right moment is the one you create, based on what you already have. And believe me, you have much more than you imagine. Now, I want to know which lesson from St. Martin had the greatest impact on you. What can you apply in your life starting today? Leave your comment and share this knowledge. And if you want to continue discovering stories that can transform the way you see the world, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because the journey of learning and transformation is just beginning.